Hello and welcome to A Critical Dragon, where I'm sitting here being insulted by my good friend Stephen Erikson. Hello,
Somebody has,
Steve.
somebody has to do it. Yeah. Hello.
Um, yes, we. This is going to be a different video. We'd started recording one, and we've now moved on to a different one. So, what we were meant to be talking about today, Steve, was poetry in the Malazan Book of the Fallen.
Alrighty. Let's do that.
Um, So you've seen Philip Chase's
Mhm.
reading of "The Age Descending," the poem at the start of the Bonehunters. You,
Yeah. I mean, dare I admit that? Am I not, I mean, I may not be allowed to watch these things. I'm not sure anymore. So,
oh, yeah,
yeah.
you're allowed to watch these things. You're just not allowed to comment on them.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Gotcha.
You know, in the comments, you can comment now because this is an interview.
All
Um,
right.
oh dear. Um, will we start again to avoid that whole?
No, no, no. Keep going. We're talking poetry. What is it? Age descending, wasn't it?
The Age Descending, and it's the poem from the start of the Bone Hunters. And Philip had done a close reading
Mhm.
of it, and because he did this close reading, and that's my thing, and I'm the only one allowed to do that. I've recorded my own version, which I need to edit and upload. But what I thought would be interesting would be I can't change mine now, it's recorded. Philip's one is already up online. But if we go through it now with you doing the reading, so we get how you think it should sound, and then your interpretation of what you were trying to say with it, everyone can see how badly Philip and I have done in trying to interpret your poem.
Yeah, that sounds eminently worthwhile. Yes.
Well, poetry, this is something I love about poetry. One of the famous poems that everyone sort of in high school now seems to know is "The Road Not Taken" by
Mhm.
Robert Frost. And everybody knows it's all about, instead of doing the same thing as everyone else and going down that road that everyone else takes, forging your own path, making a different choice, going in a different direction. And that's where the true joy is. Everyone knows that that is what that poem is about.
No, it's not.
Except, no, it's not. That is not what that poem is about.
No.
The poem is entirely not about that. But that is the how everyone talks about. Oh, I took the road not taken. That's how everyone remembers that poem. But it is not about that in the slightest.
No.
And in fact, it was a joke between him and one of his friends who would, regardless of whatever path they took when they went walking, would always complain that the other one would have been better.
Yeah.
And that's why he wrote the poem. It was a joke. And this is the strangest thing because everyone has this memory of this poem being about, forging your own path. And that's what that poem means to everyone else. But it wasn't what Frost intended. And it's not what the poem, when you actually read it, says. But we have these different meanings that can coexist, even though they
Mhm.
are mutually exclusive. So I love poetry for that flexibility.
Yeah,
Um,
and good. I mean, good thing he's dead then as well, right? So
it, and and that would be your wife still watching the football.
that would, yeah, yeah. She was not commenting on Robert Frost, lines.
So I'm going to share the poem across on the image, and hopefully it'll come across okay. And we'll get you to do a reading of the poem, and then we'll have a chat about it.
Okay.
Oh, we get my whole ponytail in profile now.
Oh God. Good thing you're not wearing a tux. You will note I always position myself so nobody sees my ponytail.
But it's nailed to the wall, isn't it? With the scalp of the last critic who annoyed you.
No, only in a literary sense. For all it has made real in this age descending, where heroes leave not but the iron ring of their names for bardic throats. I stand in the silent heart, yearning the fading beat of lives fallen to dust, and the sifting whisper proclaims glory's passing as the songs fail in dwindling echoes. For all that is made real, the chambers and halls yawn empty to my cries. For someone must give answer to all of this, someone. More or less how I wrote it, I think, is how I read it.
And what's interesting about that is you read it with a different cadence and stress pattern than I do.
And how did it relate to how Philip read it? I can't remember.
Neither can I, but he's
Okay.
my nemesis, and
Yeah.
I don't care about his version.
Gotcha.
So going through this, then, talk us through the poem.
Oh man. Thematically, the poem refers to actually the ending of the Bonehunters, but not just the Bonehunters. It refers to the main thrust of the full series and the Crippled God, that book as well. And in a sense, it is a plea for almost the voices of the unwitnessed, because in this book and in the later ones, I really start exploring the notion of the unwitnessed hero. And so that's kind of bubbles behind everything of what follows from the Bonehunters right through to the end of the series, and becomes quite sort of explicit in the last book. Also, I'm exploring, I think, the notions of nostalgia that raises up the last age, the previous age, the golden age, if you will, the age of heroes. And kind of exploring the idea that we carry those into the present, but they're kind of lifeless because they're from a different age. So they become symbolic and representative of whatever aspirations we have at the moment. But the age descending is also the age to come. So the descent continues. It goes from the past into through the present into the future. And I guess I wanted to sort of touch on the notion that at any point in our lives, which we constitute as the present, there is a sense that there are no heroes. That this is that one sort of lull in that kind of heroic history, if you will, when in fact that's not the case. And the plea for someone to give voice to that is also tie into what the storyteller can do in the present, making use of both the past and what's to come. Does that make any sense?
As much sense as poetry ever does.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
Because particularly the lines, for someone must give answer to all of this, someone. That particular little thing at the end, these cries, this was a point that I had difficulty trying to articulate specifically something here, because give answer to all of this. Is this to give answer to the lack of heroes in the modern day? Is it to give answer to the fact that the past is doomed to be forgotten? Or is it a plea for the modern day is so, or the things that are happening are so bad that we need heroes again? And there were all of these different sort of meanings that I was trying to find which was the most persuasive.
Yeah. It is certainly a plea for heroes. So in that sense, the poet is actually, in a sense, prefacing their determination to be able to tell that story, the story of the heroes. I think. I could be wrong. It's been a long time since I wrote it, but you know.
Well, thank you for that, Steve. Well, no, I just thought that would be interesting because, like, Philip and I both isolated certain aspects of it, and it is in agreement in a general sense again with what you've just talked through about it. But like each of us has an individual appreciation of it. You as the writer, the poet writing it, but that poet was a long time ago. It was. And you're a slightly different person now. So
yeah.
This is what happens when we talk about why I always talk about the construction of what an author is rather than relating it to the person, because you're a different person now.
Yeah.
Elegant proof of this. But we all kept touching on the same tones in it, but we got to them via slightly different ways and made slightly different connections. And that's one of the things that I really enjoy about close reading and literary analysis, that yes, it is subjective, but it's subjective within certain bounds and limitations. No one reading this is going to go, oh, this is a happy poem about owning a car. That's not in the poem. There are certain limitations as to what the poem is going to extend to and to cover. And that's what we kind of mean by, yes, literature is subjective. But within certain bounds, there's an outer limit to it.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the poems, I didn't write many, I don't think, maybe I did, for The God Is Not Willing. But I know the flavor of those is certainly different, I think, from what I was doing before. Of course, the poem I'm proudest of is this one called Night of the Assassin. So we could do an analysis of that one.
And yeah, we could do an analysis of that one. But one of the things that we would have to ask everyone to bear in mind is that Night of the Assassin is a style of poetry that is to be sung.
Yeah, you're going to have to do that. I haven't got the voice for it.
No, hang on. I got to say, it's your poem.
No, sorry. This is all about interpretation anyways, right? So, you know, well, let's get your cover of this poem, AP.
Well, do you need me to send you the text? No, you have the text there.
I have the text.
Yeah. What I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to move this window across so I can read it. Which means I'm not going to be able to see you.
Oh dear. Oh, the other thing, of course, is there are breaks in it where in a meta fashion. Okay, so what we're talking about here is Crackpot Trail. So there are breaks in your rendition where the audience is invited as such to comment. So, and that, of course, in itself is a comment on, what happens when somebody's,
Well, we'll tell you what then. Well, why don't we split it up this way?
Sure.
I'll be Brash Phluster.
Okay, that's good. I like it.
And you can be everyone else and the narrator. So anytime there is exposition or anything other than dialogue said by Brash Phluster, that's you, and then I'll do Brash.
I like Brash Phluster. That was good too. So I recommend you start with I was just warming up my singing voice.
I hate you.
I know.
I was just warming up my singing voice.
Brash explained.
Now, Night of the Assassin by Brash Phluster, an original composition, lyrics by Brash Phluster, music by Brash Phluster, composed in the year...
Sing or die, said Tiny Chanter.
In the black heart of Malaz city, on a black night of blackness so dark, no one could see a thing, it was all gritty, when a guard cried out, "Hark!" But the darkness did not answer because no one was there. Callum Makar was climbing the tar instead of using the stair. I hate
Okay. I know. It's good, isn't it? Okay, keep going.
The Mad Empress sat on her throne, dreaming up new ways of torture. When she heard a terrible groan, and she did bless the mendic's cure. There was writing carved on the wall, great kings and mad tyrants wrote dark curses. There in the gloomy royal stall, so ranked with smeared mercies.
Okay. She's sitting on a shithole, Togo advised demanded. Taking a dump? That's the whole point. Oh, go ahead.
That's the whole point.
Brash retorted.
Everybody sings about kings and princesses and heroes, but no one ever mentions natural bodily functions. I introduced the Mad Empress at a vulnerable moment, you see, to earn her more sympathy and remind listeners she's as human as anybody.
People know all that, Tolgert said, and they don't want to hear about it in some damn song about assassins.
I'm setting the scene.
Let him go on, said Tiny. Then he pointed a culpable finger at Brash. But no more natural bodily functions.
Out of the dark night sky rained down matter most foul, and Callum swore and winked at his eye, wishing he'd brought a towel.
I haven't seen this in a while. So.
But the chute yawned above him. His way to the Mad Empress was a black hole. Could he but reach the sticky rim, he was but moments from his goal. In days of yore, she was an assassin too, a whore of murder with claws unfurled. But now she just needed hard to poo, straining to make her hair curl.
I said...
It's part of the story!
Wheeled Brash Phluster.
I can't help it!
Neither could the Empress, seems, added Apto under his breath.
Callum looked up then to see a granado, but swift he was in dodging its plunge, and he launched up into the brown window, and in the narrow channel he thrashed and lunged, and climbed, seeking the light, or at least he hoped for some other way to end the plight of this darkest night, as he prayed for the light of day. Through the narrowest of chutes, he climbed into a pink cavern and swam among the furly flukes. Oh, he cried, when will I ever learn? 'Tis said across the entire empire that the Empress Lysine did give birth to the royal assassins of the claw entire. You can take that for what it is worth. But Callum Makar knew her better than most. He did carve his name on her wall, and we'd all swear he got there first, because we never went there at all.
Imagine, if you dare, the nature of the silence that followed Night of the Assassin. To this very day, all these years later, I struggle and fail to find words of sufficient girth and suitable precision and can only crawl or reach closer, prostrate with nary more than a few gibbering mumbles. We had all halted, I do recall, but the faces on all sides were but a blur, barring that of Selip, who marched in from a cloud of dust, smiling with blackened teeth, and said, "Thank you for waiting." All right, so, I remember people complaining sometimes about the poems in the Malazan Book of the Fall, and they don't have rhymes. So I thought, okay, let's get some rhyming in here. This is a proper poem. So
it's going to take me a moment, Steve. That is just truly terrible,
isn't it? It's so much fun to write bad stuff. It's a blast. And I mean, Crackpot Trail, it's full of it, right? So some of the poems in there are just, so atrocious. I mean,
well, let's do an analysis, shall we? Or shall
All
we
right.
leave it at, or shall we leave it at, don't ever analyze this poem?
There it was. Yeah.
Well, obviously, this refers to an incident from
Yeah.
from Dead House Gates.
Yep.
It's not quite what I remember from Dead House Gates, though. Are you making a meta commentary on how events can be narrativized and somehow take on a different meaning?
Yeah.
Glad we had this chat.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's just awful. I can't even pretend.
I know. But I mean, you could break it down. We could break it because the first stanza it creates a setting. Okay, so think of it structurally. So it's in Malaz City.
Well, you have the physical setting, you have a temporal setting in that it's nighttime.
And a black night of blackness. Yeah.
And to be honest, I thought you were having fun with the it was a dark and stormy night opening to something.
Sure. And then the next stanza
introduces.
Well, I don't know what to say about the next stanza, but yes, it's Kalam Makar, and it places him in the setting of Malaz City, but climbing a tower.
Yeah. So it's giving us our protagonist, and it's giving us the action that he is in the midst of doing.
Yeah, you have to think about it. Brash Phluster. I mean, it's pretty impressive. It drops you in. You're right in the story at this point, right? Second stanza.
Hey, and to think that is only 8 lines, and they're very short lines. And already we have physical setting. We have the time period. We have a feeling of it because it's darkness and it's gritty. So we get a sense of tone, and then we have our central protagonist, Callum, and a sense of action. So it's all building. The tension's right there. This is genius.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it's also it's sing don't show, right? So okay, let's move to the next one. And the Mad Empress.
Now we have our antagonist being introduced.
Yeah.
And obviously,
clever play on the word throne there, right? You noticed that, yes?
Oh, it's a very clever play on the word throne. But obviously what is interesting to me from a narrative perspective is the bias of the narrative here, because it's the Mad Empress. So we're clearly being set up with Callum as hero, but the Mad Empress is obviously the evil ruler. So there's a nice clear signal in the narrative here about who the good guy is, who the bad guy is.
And we can already work out from those 3 stanzas that Kalam is, because it's also called Night of the Assassin, which is a bit of a giveaway, but he's climbing up the tower to where she is, right? Yeah.
And not only that, but the subversion of the stereotypical who is in charge of an empire, a man. And here we have Brash Phluster doing away with that and having an empress. So subverting that very casual, lazy trope.
Yeah, and it's not signposted either, so it's just sort of slipped in there as part of the narrative.
And obviously to give that sense of slight fantastic element to it, the Mendic's cure, presumably medic.
Why something like that, I guess. Yeah, it clearly is just it's there for the the rhythm, the scan of the whole thing. So
yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Because you got torture and then cure, right? Which is 2 syllables and then down to 1. So
there was writing carved on the wall. Great kings and mad tyrants wrote dire curses there in the gloomy royal stall, so ranked with smeared mercies. Now, admittedly, the rhyme here is a little strained.
It's called a slant rhyme. It's okay. It works. It's a slant rhyme. It's okay.
Yeah, but it's not signaled that that's where this is going. And it does strain, the rhythm slightly.
I don't think you should use the word strain in this at all. But anyways, the whole point is what this is actually doing is subtextually telling you that this throne room as such is actually something that your average reader can fully understand when they go into any public, washroom, toilet, and sit in there and look around, and they see that mad kings and tyrants and wizards have all been writing all over the sides of the walls. So, it's an invitation into sort of a kind of subconscious understanding of what is being foreshadowed here in terms of the setting, because I haven't specifically described the setting, have I?
No, you haven't. But this creates that sense of identification, that sense of narrative ease that the reader can just slide into.
I wouldn't use the word slide either, but anyways, go on.
And this is where we have our first interruption.
Yeah.
Which
the nefarious audience is actually interrupting the entire rhythm of the flow of this thing. Yes.
Terrible thing to do to an artist. Interrupt them.
Yeah.
And this, obviously, as you were just saying, like, this is the subtextual hints about that this isn't a throne in the typical sense. It's the throne in the sense of a bathroom. And here we have the audience come to that realization.
Yeah. Tulgard Weiss is actually, he put it together pretty quickly, I think.
Yeah, he did, surprisingly accurate.
Yeah.
And what I enjoy here is you explain the artistic process, because, Brash points out that this is something that is ignored in so many narratives. Like, anytime we see Star Trek, they have these beautiful rooms, but no bathroom. All of these heroic quests, you never see them sort of sneaking off into the bushes to go to the bathroom, or coming back from the bushes, with a handful of leaves.
That's a very good point. Although it is a case of where the author basically has to verbally defend what they produce, which is, a bit of a flaw in Brash Phluster there. Not quite in keeping with his name, if you think about it, because the whole idea is you just want to be bold in your proclamations, and then to turn around and tell people, yeah, look, I'm subverting the tropes. That's just sort of, it's kind of, crass. Maybe I could have called him Crass Bluster.
But I do like this, because not only by mentioning that thing that gets overlooked in narratives, but also highlights this thing that we see in so many narratives, that introducing characters at a vulnerable moment, introducing characters in a way to gain the audience's sympathy. Like, this is one of the fundamental principles of, do you want your audience to like your character? Have them do something nice, or have them be vulnerable, to create that point of connection. Brash Phluster is right on the money here with, this is one of the techniques.
Well, yeah, but at the same time, you have to recognize that he's subverting even the Mad Empress, because she's at her most vulnerable. I mean, is there no position more vulnerable than that one on her throne, as it were? So it's actually flipping it back into almost, let's hope the Mad Empress is not assassinated, because she's doing a perfectly human act right here, even though she was thinking about torture at the time. But even still, why wouldn't you think about torture under the circumstances?
I take it the football's going well?
I don't know. I hear frustration in the background. Yes. But as far as I know, it's still 1-0. So nobody spoil that, by the way.
Well, people will know by tomorrow anyway. But so then it moves on. We get into the next stanza. So again, switching the perspective back to Clam. Out of the dark night sky, rain down matter most foul. Now, you see, this is where I think Brash has made a mistake, because if Clam is climbing the outside of the tower, this idea of him being in the chute. This is actually quite hard for the modern audience to visualize the idea of the chute running down the outside of the tower instead of some sort of internal plumbing.
So they've not visited castles then, because the classic visit, to a castle is that stained streak below a particular chute on one of the towers. And if you go up inside, you can see exactly why, right? But you did miss out the whole, that smeared mercies. I mean, that's alliteration at its finest. And it's quite evocative as well, isn't it? Don't you think?
I don't know how much more of this I can take, Steve.
Well, okay, Kalam's just been shat upon, right?
Yeah.
And that's why
and then we have the building up the tension as he is nearing his goal.
Yeah, and we do a point of view, a psychic distance pulling at that point because he wishes he brought a towel. So,
but what I find interesting here is suddenly the narrative actually changes and moves away from the literal into a more metaphorical reading. Because, well, we go from Kalam, an assassin who is described as bearish, and he's what, like 6'4" with giant shoulders, climbing up this tower. He gets to the top of the chute, and then there is the suggestion that he climbs up inside the Empress.
Yeah, so it's a bit. I guess you could call it poetic license. Suspension.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Talk about a shit poem.
Yeah.
And then we move into basically the culmination of the whole poem. Let's just skip on down to the idea that Lysine gave birth to the royal claw, the royal assassins of the claw. And the implication that... oh...
What implication, AP? What implication?
Oh, this is just... Well, if she's the mother, then Callum's the father. Oh dear. And we'd all swear he got there first because we never went there at all.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
poetry. It's an interesting lark.
Yeah, I mean it's a hobby of mine, so it's just and just sort of to slip into the musical cant of it, I think is
But in all seriousness about this, the range of different poetic styles, and that because you use a number actually in Crackpot Trail, use a couple of different poetic styles for the poets. But when I think of like when I was a kid and we used to get the book of children's verse, and there were all of these like wonderful rhyming poems, and then there were absurdist poems. There were poems that were gibberish, and we think of like Jabberwock.
Yeah.
That it's full of ridiculous, silly language. It's the sound of it. It's these sounds and the feels of saying the words. And it doesn't have to be all serious and full of stentorian, portentous meaning. But you can have wonderfully evocative and serious poetry. And I think this is something in fantasy writing. When I first read Lord of the Rings, I skipped. Well, I read the first few, and then I think it was when I got to Tom Bombadil and Ring-a-Ding-a-Dillo that I had to start skipping Tom Bombadil on my first read. I was a wee bit younger. But going back on it now, like seeing those different things and seeing it gives the world texture and flavor.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a number of poems in the main series that are deliberately, well, let's call it awkward. And in some cases, that's Tentorian pomposity is sort of out front. And the giveaway, of course, is generally the attribution that follows. So the poem itself can really, yeah, it can be the lone voice crying on the pulpit. But then when you read the attribution, you realize that it's just some guy, defending, I don't know what, but some small role in some minor guild in some small town. So,
yeah. But this is something that I've said before about doing the dip chapter analysis or close reading or prologue analysis, where I said pay attention to the attributions, to things about the dates or what something is being called, because sometimes those are giving you a clue as to how to read it. So you have one of the guys was a jumped up sort of defender of some minor guild somewhere, giving this impassioned sort of defense, and you had to look at it and go, no, we're meant to read this as this guy's an idiot. You have other ones that are attributed, and they're written in a very overblown, overly dramatic style, and it's given a similarly title that the work has been extracted from, to give you that sense that no, this is meant to be. This is meant to be over the top, purple prose. It's all very, very deliberate, and you're meant to then have a sense of fun in reading it.
Yeah. There'll be things like comment to the preface to the prologue or to the introduction to whatever. Yeah, volume 6. So yeah, but stuff going on.
Thank you very much for making me read that and record this, because this is going to go out now, and that is now going to live on the internet for a while.
It is, and actually, I was very impressed with your performance, AP. It was very good. But
I hate you. Why am I friends with you? You're so mean.
It was a good performance. You'll see. The comments will echo this.
Well, thank you very much, Steve. I'm just going to thank everyone for watching now. Thank you for sticking with us, and I will see you in the next one.
You made a very good Brash Phluster. I may have to reconsider things.
Oh God. Bye.